thank you. Now, please put your hands together for this afternoon's MCs, Coconcino, Arizona County Treasurer and NALEO Treasurer, Sarah Benatar, and New Mexico Commission of Public Records member and NALEO Secretary, Brian Colon.
Buenas tardes, ¿cómo están? A little bit louder, we got to make up for this morning. ¿Cómo están? Well, I can't believe we've arrived at the last lunch plenary of the NALEO 41st Annual Conference. These last few days have just absolutely flown by. As a board member, and I might be a little biased, but I think these conferences get better every year.
Sara, I couldn't agree more. My name is Brian Colon. What an honor and privilege to share the stage with the Honorable Sara today. Buena comida hoy, and for one, I thought this morning's plenary session, strengthening the foundations for Latino economic growth, was a can't-miss session. One of the things we haven't talked a lot about is that all of these critical items are available streaming online, and it's especially important to tune in during this election year. If you didn't get to see it this morning, check out our live stream page at naleo.org hashtag or slash NALEO 2024-live. Anybody going to remember that website? You're not going to remember. Just go online, naleo.org, and find these live streams. You can rewatch our entire key conference sessions along with these 3 days of awesome when they're over. So join us online. Sara?
Gracias for that reminder, Brian, because I actually forgot too. So that is very important, especially as we go home and go forward this election cycle. And now, here to make a very special announcement, please help us to welcome to this stage from the great state of Georgia, City of Forest Park, Georgia Council member and NALEO board member, the Honorable Hector Gutierrez, District Attorney for the Western Judicial Circuit District, State of Georgia, the Honorable Deborah Gonzalez, and NALEO Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Jerry Gonzalez.
Woo! Thank you, Treasurer Benatar and Secretary Colon. Let's give it up for them. And thank you, everybody, for being here. This has been an incredible conference, and Las Vegas has been a wonderful host for us. So it's been a beautiful city to enjoy. But my colleagues from Georgia and I want to drop in, and we have a little secret for you guys. We have a secret to tell you. So let's see if you can figure it out. Let's take a look at this. Let's go. Okay, so there is a lot going on. There's a lot of planning to do before next year's conference, and we have a whole entire presidential election coming up in a few months. So trust me when I tell you that Georgia is going to be a little bit busy for a while. But in light of that, and the election we have coming up, today's luncheon plenary on the Latino vote in 2024 will be great. And that is why I'd like to take a moment to recognize another resident of Atlanta and today's luncheon host, the real drink, the Coca-Cola Company. So here to give some remarks on their behalf are Coca-Cola Company representatives Felicia Garcia, Director of Public Affairs. Let's welcome her on stage.
Hola, NALEO. On behalf of the Coca-Cola Company, we'd like to thank NALEO for hosting an amazing conference in fabulous Las Vegas. And we hope you had a chance to make it down the street to the Coca-Cola store at some point. The old saying goes, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But I'd like each of you to make an exception this time. Take your learnings from this week and apply them back in your communities. At Coca-Cola, our motto is to refresh the world and make a difference. Events like this embody that spirit, where policymakers, business leaders, and the Latino community and beyond collaborate to bring ideas and actions to life that provide opportunities for countless individuals and businesses. You can find Coca-Cola in all 50 states and almost every single community. But since 1886, our home has been Atlanta, Georgia. That's why we at Coca-Cola, along with our delegates, are so excited to announce that the 2025 NALEO Conference will be hosted in our home city of Atlanta, Georgia. So with that, we'd like everyone to propose a toast here. Please raise a Coke or your beverage of choice to Las Vegas, to NALEO, to all of the wonderful policymakers and business leaders in attendance, and to Atlanta. Salud. We'll see you there.
Thank you, Coca-Cola, for those remarks and for your generous support of NALEO. We're looking forward to meeting you down south for our 42nd annual NALEO conference next summer. Sorry, y'all, long night. All right. Do I introduce anyone else? Okay. All right, this one.
Thank you again to the Georgia delegation and Ms. Felicia Garcia and the Coca-Cola Company for their remarks and support. Who's excited for Georgia? I can tell you there's only going to be one thing on my mind between now and next summer, and that's Georgia.
Thanks again to the Georgia delegation for joining us today and welcoming us to the Peach State next summer when we've got Georgia on our mind. I can feel that Southern hospitality already. So mark your calendars, July 22nd through the 24th. Now keep this in mind, tickets for the NALEO 42nd Annual Conference will go on sale early next year. And by this point, you know we're gonna sell out early. The venue's gonna be a little bit more intimate, so buy your tickets early.
Gracias for that reminder. And now, everyone, buen provecho. Enjoy your lunch before we begin the next portion of the program, the Latino Vote in 2024.
Perfect.
Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy your meal, and our plenary will begin in a few minutes. In the meantime, please enjoy your meal. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We will begin shortly. Good afternoon, everyone. Please take your seats as our program is about to resume. Thank you. Now, please welcome back to the stage this afternoon's MCs, Coconino, Arizona County Treasurer and NALEO Treasurer Sarah Benatar, and New Mexico Commission of Public Records member and NALEO Secretary Brian Colon.
Welcome back from lunch, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your meal. Now that we've nourished our bodies with a satisfying meal, it's time to nourish our minds with an enriching afternoon plenary session.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. And you know, this is a great venue because it's the one place that I attend and that I go to where people actually introduce me as Brian Colon instead of Brian Colon. I mean, if you can't understand why I appreciate that, you'll think about it and later you'll understand. It's been tough being a Colon my whole life, but it's great to be here. And before we get into it, let me just tell you what else I'm grateful for. We have, see, if I can make you happy, then I've done my job. Before we get into it, we have got to say we are so grateful. You know, this does not happen, and that's not an expression, but it literally doesn't happen without our sponsors. And our national media sponsor, Comcast, NBC, Universal, Telemundo is that national sponsor, and we couldn't be more grateful for Telemundo. You know, in this time when we think about Hispano, Latino entertainment and television, I can't help but reflect upon the loss that we suffered last week of somebody who was in our living rooms much of our lives when he used to say, "You got it, man, take it away." ¿Quién? Johnny Canales, that's right. And Telemundo did a beautiful job celebrating his life. And not only that, they provided incredible assistance to NALEO. They have been a dedicated partner in our organization's work, efforts, and legacy to ensure that Latinos have the information necessary to become citizens of this beautiful country, register to vote, and then to turn out the vote and participate in the also important census and more every single day. So here to provide a brief set of remarks on behalf of Comcast, NBC Universal, Telemundo Enterprises is El Mero Mero, Vice President of Corporate and External Affairs and NALEO Educational Fund Board member, Luis Rosero. Give him a big round of applause. Aplauso por Don Luis. Aquí está.
Wow, that was a great entrance. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. So glad to be here at today's plenary session entitled The Latino Vote in 2024. It's Thursday. It's been a great conference, and it's always an honor to join NALEO's annual conference. Congratulations on yet another sold-out gathering. You know, this is a testament to NALEO's organization and the power of the collective voice of the Latino community in the United States. With Latinos poised to play such a pivotal role in this year's election, Telemundo is doubling down on its commitment to providing the Hispanic community with fact-based news, tools, and resources to help voters navigate what will be probably the most consequential election in our history. Telemundo is deep into Decisión 2024, which is our election year multi-platform news and civic engagement initiative across Telemundo's network, local stations, digital platforms, and of course, along with our national and local partners. Decisión 2024 features expanded election news and campaign coverage, national and local Latino voter polls and town halls. It will also include candidate debates, voter registration drives, which we have done many with NALEO, and innovative fact-checking tools such as T Verifica, which is our platform developed to help combat the proliferation of misinformation and disinformation that is permeating throughout our community on all types of social, digital, and linear media. I can't stress that enough. That is one of our biggest challenges and one of the things that we are going to be focusing on. But we're going to be doing that because we're going to be leveraging all areas of our company. Comcast, NBC Universal, Telemundo plans to engage and motivate all eligible Latinos to participate in this important civic duty. Latinos will influence this election outcome, and Decisión 2024 wants to make sure everyone has access to the information and resources needed to participate throughout the electoral process. So as the fastest growing network in the country, regardless of language, we recognize and celebrate the tremendous potential of our vibrant and diverse community. So of course, I wouldn't be able to stand here without showing a quick video. So video, please.
Telemundo is the #1 producer of Spanish-language scripted content in the U.S. We are more than content creators. We're community builders, driven forward with a singular purpose: to elevate, celebrate, and connect Latinos and our cultures every day. We bring our community together through authentic storytelling, trend-setting shows that resonate deeply, generate fandom, and defy expectations. Star power and premium productions that shatter records. Artists and events that exemplify our enormous diversity. Reimagining storytelling for tomorrow. Offering access anytime, anywhere, across every screen. Authentically created every day by U.S. Hispanics for U.S. Hispanics. And now, more than ever,
Y estaremos ahí para reportarlo. Las cosas como son.
telling it like it is. Which is why Telemundo is #1 in the hearts of Hispanics, lighting up the world with stories that matter to us all. Together, unstoppable.
Well, thank you. So I hope that video shows how passionate we are about enabling the success of our community. That's why Telemundo, NBC, Comcast is proud to serve as NALEO's official media partner for the 7th year in a row, and hopefully many more years to come. However, we can't do this alone. We need partners. We need partners that we can depend on and we trust, long-standing partners such as NALEO. And I would really like to take this opportunity to thank the NALEO staff. Many of us in this room have been staffers, here included. We all know how much work that goes into this. So please, I would hope, join me in giving the entire NALEO staff a round of applause for their hard work. But I would really especially like to recognize somebody special, and that is my good friend, I think everybody's good friend, Arturo Vargas. Arturo, congratulations on leading NALEO for 30 years. 3 decades of Arturo's stewardship, strengthening democracy by promoting the full participation of Latinos in civic life. Our country and the Latino community are in a better place thanks to you. You have personally sacrificed so much for our community, and generations of Latinos will be better off because of your hard work and dedication. We thank you so much for your leadership, your ongoing commitment, and NBC, Comcast, Telemundo is proud to be part of your journey, that journey, and we look forward to supporting NALEO for many, many more years to come. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your lunch.
Muchísimas gracias, Luis, for your continued partnership in Telemundo.
And now we've got some great opportunity to bring you some more wonderful words, but I got a text message while I was backstage and somebody said, "What is that you're wearing around your neck?" I said, "Well, it's my beautiful Tierra del Encanto, New Mexico, with some turquoise in the middle." I see we got some New Mexicans here. And they said, no, but what is it? I know it's New Mexico, but can't guess. And I said, it's a bolo tie. They said, bolo what? The only thing that they knew about was the bolo menudo they had this morning to get back at it. A bolo tie. For those of you who are not from the West, it's a bolo tie, the official tie of the Tierra del Encanto, New Mexico. So there you go. There's your trivia for the day. I know you already knew that, but a few people didn't know that. So let me just, I'm on script. It's in there. You just didn't read it ahead of time. The staff is going crazy. And I love them for it. We're going to welcome an incredible public servant to the stage, Otra Boricua. He's had a dedicated career of over 35 years of public service to his community. He is the 13th president of this beautiful organization that we know and love, NALEO. He is the Hudson County Clerk in New Jersey, the Honorable E. Maldonado, and that's the Junior E. Maldonado. Venga, el presidente, el mero mero.
Thank you, Treasurer Benatar and Secretary Colon. I'm going to ask for a minute of presidential privilege, if I can, to acknowledge two people who are here with me today. The person that kept me on point and on schedule throughout the whole conference, my executive assistant, Bang Dizon. Bang, thank you. And my beautiful baby girl who just finished her bachelor's degree and is starting master's program in September, Kellyanne. Kelly, love you, baby girl, love you. And thank you to everyone who has joined us for the last day of the NALEO conference. So I have been NALEO president for only 1 year, since last August. When I came into this role, I knew we had a lot of work to do. But I also knew that nothing could waver my confidence in the power of the NALEO network. That is because of everyone here in this room. My gratitude for the incredible work you all do as public servants can be measured by my deep appreciation for NALEO as an organization. I have been loyal to NALEO, not just because the organization has been loyal to me, which it has been, but because of how NALEO has been loyal to Latinos in public life, all youths. When we decided to go into public service, whether we started in local government or law enforcement like me, or whether we cut our teeth running for state or federal office, we knew that the choice to dedicate our lives to making life better for other people was going to come with a sacrifice. That is why it has been my priority to see that NALEO continues to uplift wellness for elected and appointed officials. It is vital that we recognize what it takes for us to be safe and healthy, not just for our own sake, but the sake of our families and friends, and ultimately our constituents. My time as NALEO president has been marked by a tumultuous period in our country and in the world, but also by the precipice of another presidential election season that is clearly underway. I think about everything that has prepared me to be a leader for my community needs. In times like these, from my service in the United States Navy to my work in law enforcement and to my work in government, all of this has prepared me with the context and insight as to what effective leadership needs to look like. I implore you all to make that same reflection as well. And while my time as a board member and as NALEO president ends here, My work isn't done, and neither is yours. I want you all to remember why you're here, but also why you should be here. Remember what prepared you, and honor what preserves your fight for your community. I want to thank NALEO and the NALEO Educational Fund staff for the incredible work in putting together the NALEO Annual Conference and for helping make my year as president of this organization such a great success. Thank you. Let's give them a great round of applause. I will be remiss if I don't want to thank the Bellagio Hotel and incredible staff for seeing that we had a wonderful and rewarding time. Let's hear it for the staff and Bellagio and the waiters and everybody here that has worked so diligently to make sure that we are comfortable and having a great time. So let's give them an applause. One more. All right. And with that, I want to thank you all again for being here. I can't wait for next plenary on the Latino vote. So to get that started, I would like to bring back to the stage the Honorable Sarah Benetta and the Honorable Brian Colon.
Gracias, Presidente Maldonado. Let's give him one more round of applause. Your leadership has guided the organization in a great direction, and NALEO is stronger because of your service. Let's give him, again, one more round of applause because he deserves it. Now I'm going to give it to my partner in crime. Where'd he go? There you are.
See, for those of you that know me a long time, you know I lost about 80 pounds, so now I'm so thin you can't even see me. Qué linda, mi reina. Okay, now we have the great pleasure and honor. Look, this guy needs no introduction. He is a visionary. His leadership and achievements over the decades have left an indelible mark on our Latino Hispano community. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming NALEO and NALEO Educational Fund CEO. Get on your feet, ladies and gentlemen, for the incredible Arturo Vargas.
Gracias. Gracias. Have a seat. Hello, my NALEO diehards. All right, you made it to the last luncheon. Excellent. That's why we saved the best meal for you, filet mignon. You enjoying that meal? All right. It's just fabulous to see all the faces in this room. It's been an extraordinary 3 days. It's been extraordinary 3 decades of working with an incredible staff, with the boards of directors, to really bring this organization to this point. It really is a true testament to the progress that we have made, not just as an organization, but what we have made as a political community, a community that participates in American democracy. So, but let's talk about who's not here today. And I'm not talking about the hundreds of people who are crudo and nursing probably having that bola menudo board member Colon was talking about. I'm talking about the 2 men who are the presumptive nominees for their parties to be president of the United States. You know, this is the first election year in decades that we have not been able to welcome at least one of the presumptive candidates, nominees for their parties at the NALEO conference. And it is extraordinarily disappointing. Just remember, whenever somebody tells you there is a scheduling conflict, it says something very important about that person's priorities. Because there is nothing more valuable than where you spend your time. Because you can never get your time back. And where you spend your time says a lot about what's important to you. And both President Biden and President Trump have decided that being here, apparently, was not worth their time. Now, it's not a reflection on this organization. And we actually sweetened the deal for them, because we told them not only can you address 1,000 Latino leaders and their supporters at the NALEO annual conference, but you will have another 300 to 400 Asian American and Pacific Islander political leaders and their supporters that you can address at a joint session of both conferences. And they declined. But that's okay, because we know that not being here is a risk to them, not to us. Because the Latino vote will be decisive in this election once again. So what we're going to do this afternoon is talk a little bit about the Latino vote, what impact it's going to have. And to help me have this conversation, I'm honored and really delighted to welcome a good friend of the organization, the Emmy Award-winning anchor, Nicole Suarez with Telemundo. Nicole, can you join me on stage?
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Oh, I love it.
We're matching.
We're matching. We color coordinated today.
How's everybody doing? Are you still with us?
Yeah.
I like the energy.
These are the diehards.
The diehards,
These
I
are
love
diehards.
it. We made it to the last day, and what a place to be in Las Vegas for me. It's so amazing to be in this room, and I am so proud to be here with all of you, the Latinos that are changing the fabric of this country. So fantastic to always participate and be part of these events. I can't believe it's already been 2 years since NALEO Chicago. Do we have anybody from Chicago? Yeah, we got some Chicago reps. I like it. So great. Thank you, Arturo.
2 years from NALEO Chicago, and it's been 5 years since NALEO Miami.
Oh, wow.
Remember Miami? We
gotta
had
bring it
8
back.
presidential candidates walk this stage in Miami.
Yeah.
So again, it's been decades that we haven't had one. And what's at risk? Well, the fact that they're not talking to the people who are in contact, in close touch, all of you, with the Latino electorate. So I'm going to share some fast facts about where we are. So once again, Latinos are going to make history in this election because of the number of Latinos that are going to turn out to vote. Every single election has a historic turnout because our electorate is growing so fast. Our projections at NALEO Educational Fund are that 17.5 million Latinos will vote in November of 2024. That's an increase of 6.5% over 2020, meaning that 1 out of 10 of all voters in this country will be a Latino.
Now, these are fantastic numbers, but we do know historically, Arturo, that our community hasn't turned out to vote as much as other communities. Although there was a boost in 2020, is that what we're going to see, hopefully, in 2024?
Well, you know, 2020 was an historic election for many reasons. It was an incredible turnout of the entire American electorate. Whites voted at historic numbers, African Americans voted at historic numbers, Asian Americans at historic numbers, and Latinos voted in historic numbers. So the fact that we're going to see an increase over that historic turnout in and of itself speaks about the engagement of the Latino community. But you're absolutely right. We're not voting enough. And there's another data set here I'm going to share with you about what our challenge is in actually turning out the eligible Latino electorate. But in this election, we've heard a lot about battleground states. There are 7 states that will potentially decide the outcome of this election. And here we show the growth of the Latino electorate in those particular states. So take a look here. Arizona's Latino electorate grew by 49%. Georgia is on our mind. Grew by 79%, increase of Latino eligible voters between 2012 and 2022. 50% increase in Michigan. I'm going to skip over Nevada because I'm going to go into detail there. 105% increase of eligible Latino voters in the state of Carolina del Norte.
Wow.
Yeah, that may be a future NALEO conference site.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, 52%, and Wisconsin, 53% increase.
And we should note here that through these states, we see 93 of the electoral college votes needed from the 270 to get to the White House. 93 of the 270. So without a doubt, we know that Joe Biden or Donald Trump won't be able to win without the Latino vote. But do you think they're doing enough to win our community?
Of course they're not doing enough. They're not here.
Yeah.
Right? But let's talk about Nevada, because we're here in our home state. Whoa! Nevada. So you heard from Council Member Olivia Diaz at the beginning of our conference when we had the profile discussion about what the Latino community looks like in this state. And you heard these numbers. 486,000 Latinos are eligible to vote here in this state. That's more than 1 out of 5 of Nevadans. Registered voters, almost the same proportion, 350,000. And our projections are that 276,000 Latinos will vote. Now, let me just say something about our projections. We look at trends over the past several presidential elections to see how our turnout is growing. And so this is based on just looking at the numbers, what the projection would be for the current year. But it doesn't take into account things that could change that, like the politics of the moment, how much investment we're going to see from campaigns and candidates to mobilize the Latino vote. So this is just a floor. This is the minimum of what we expect. So if we really do our job, we should actually prove NALEO wrong and actually have a greater turnout.
Well, hopefully. And Arturo, I gotta say, I've had a great time here in Las Vegas. Everyone is so nice. Everyone is so nice.
Because they want you to spend your money.
Yes, and I had a chance to visit Telemundo Las Vegas yesterday. Marta Saldaña was right there. Shout out to Telemundo Las Vegas. She was telling me that the voters here aren't party voters, they're candidate voters. Do you think that's a shift that we could see on a national level in the coming years?
You know, I've been doing this a long time. And that's something we have seen about the Latino electorate. You know, they don't necessarily vote based on is there a D behind that candidate or an R behind that candidate. You see that a lot in nonpartisan elections where people do not have that letter behind their name. They really are looking to who is asking me for my vote. Do they actually understand what my priorities are? Do they actually know what my life experience is? Or are they assuming that you know what I care about because I'm Latino? So I do think that there's a lot to be said about Latinos really looking at the candidates versus just being straight line party voters.
Yeah, and we of course have to be informed voters.
All right, fast fact number 3. The Latino electorate has the highest share of first-time voters. Now this is really, really significant because between 2012 and 2022, the Hispanic eligible electorate increased by 10.4 million.
Yeah.
26% of Latinos voted for the first time in either 2020 or 2022. So we really are looking at a new electorate, a fresh electorate, when we look at the number of Latinos who are entering the voting age for the first time. And there are some significant challenges we have to getting those people registered to vote for the first time and voting for the first time. There's a lack of information. There's a lack of understanding of the process to cast the ballot. Lots of rules have changed throughout the country in different states about the process to register to vote, to be able to cast the ballot, whether it's early voting, mail-in ballots. There are new rules all over, and people are just learning them for the first time that they're voting.
We were talking about a stat backstage just now that 88% of Latino voters that were registered to vote actually turned out to cast a ballot in 2020, and that is so significant. So I want to take this moment to applaud NALEO and everything that they do to register voters. Please, let's hear it for them and all of you as well for that effort because it's so important.
But Nicole, you raised an important point. You know, we talk about, and you'll see this in the next slide, the gap between, and let me actually go to it, the gap between the ones who are eligible to vote and the people who actually vote. So in 2024, there will be more than 33 million Latinos eligible to vote, meaning adult US citizens, 18 years of age or greater. Again, we're projecting that of the 33.7 million, 17.5 million will vote. But of the registered voters, you're right, of the registered Latinos, 88% turned out. And that very closely mirrors the turnout of non-Hispanic white voters, of African-American voters, of the electorate overall in the country. So our challenge really is getting Latinos registered to vote, because if we get them registered to vote, the chances are extremely high that we will have an actual voter. The other thing here is that since 2020, nearly 2 million Latinos have turned 18. And this is why our electorate is growing so fast, because our young people are coming of age. And so if there's anything we can do to really increase voter turnout, is that we can motivate our young people to turn out and vote, to get registered and to vote.
And what I thought about this slide that was so interesting is that new Latino voters are showing a more independent streak. Actually, New York Times just had an article that said RFK Jr. is polling surprisingly well among Latinos. What do you think is attracting them to these types of candidates?
You know, and I think that goes exactly to this next slide, that there is an independent streak growing, and I think there is a sense of people being alienated by the extremes of both parties. You know, we heard this yesterday at yesterday's plenary conversation that my friend Adam Brandon, he had the data that he shared with us. And, his line was, if you don't like the politics of the moment, just give it a few years, because it's going to change. Because young people are changing their orientation in terms of their political affiliation. Well, look what's happening in the Latino community. He did not have these data, but these data very much reflect exactly the point he was making. If you look at established voters, los viejitos, if you look at the established voters, 59% identify as Democrats, 23% identified as Republicans, only 18% as independents. But when you look at newer voters, and by newer voters, again, we're talking about people under the age of 40, those people who are turning 18, their propensity to register as independents is extremely high. Both parties have lost ground with our newer voters. The Republican Party went from a 23% to 18%, a greater drop among Democrats, 59% to 45%, and this huge bump up in Latino newer voters who identify as independents.
Very interesting.
And what are their concerns? The economy, inflation, that really is top of mind for Latino voters today. I was just at the breakout session we did with AAPI lead, and there was a demographer there who presented a plethora of data on AAPI and Latino voters, and it's consistent between our two communities that in this election cycle, it's inflation and the economy that is top of mind for voters. Well, what happened to my slide? Let's see if we can get it back.
Little technical difficulty.
Little technical difficulties. So the economy is number one. Gun violence and immigration are less important. And in fact, this narrative that immigration is the top concern for Latinos is not really accurate for election 2024. So, there was a big announcement from the White House. And I think we really, and I hope the panelists get into this, what is the White House thinking to get Latinos excited about this election when their big announcement for Latinos is an immigration issue? Not that it's the wrong thing to do, but they're not talking to Latinos about the issues that are most important to them right now, which is the economy and inflation. On immigration, about 2 in 3 Latinos say they're providing a path to citizenship they support, yet 64% of Latinos also said that given the president authority to close the borders when there are too many migrants trying to enter the country is something they support as well.
So we've seen that within our community, we're mixed on this issue of immigration. But some would argue that the Latino vote doesn't exist, that it shouldn't exist, because so many of us have been here for so many generations. Obviously, somos Latinos, lo llevamos en la sangre, but we're also Americans. We feel Americans. We are Americans.
We are Americans.
So is it an issue? Is it a problem to keep putting us in this box?
You know, I've had the opportunity to travel all over the country. And people often tell me, well, you know, Latinos in New York are different from Latinos in Miami, different from Latinos in Houston, different from Latinos in Phoenix, different from Latinos in LA. Yes, there are absolutely differences, but I also see a lot of common issues. Number one, people care about their children, about their families, and their future. And in fact, our most effective messaging to get Latinos registered to vote and vote is don't do it for yourself. Do it for your kids. Do it for your family. That's what motivates Latinos. And I think issues that affect children, that affect family, are not unique to Latinos, but do affect us more, again, because of our demographics. Yeah. Because so much of our population is so young.
Of course. And we have to obviously pave the way for a future that's very positive for our families here in the country.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, you know, Nicole, your name was supposed to be here.
Oh, it's okay. I'm here.
So I'm going to turn this over now to Nicole because she's going to moderate a panel discussion with two great friends of NALEO who spend all their time thinking about this stuff. One from a D perspective, one from an R perspective, and they're actually friends. And they're friends of NALEO. And I'm so glad that they accepted our invitation to be here because their time is money, and they could be someplace else making some money, being on television, being on radio, but they agreed to be here on this stage to share their expertise with you. So, Nicole, I turn this over
Thank
to
you again. Let's get another round of applause for Arturo, please, for all those amazing numbers, facts, statistics. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, how are we doing? Still with us? How about back there? I need some energy back there. There we go. Do we have people, obviously, from Nevada? Yeah? Do we have New York? What about Florida? Tenemos mexicanos, me imagino. ¿Y qué tal puertorriqueños? También. ¿Dominicanos? All right, representing Colombia. Woo! Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again so much for being with us here today. We're very excited to start this discussion. So without further ado, without a doubt, I want to welcome to the stage Solidarity Strategies founder, Mr. Chuck Rocha, and Grassroots Lab principal, Mr. Mike Madrid. I know you guys can do better. Let's put up the energy. Hello.
See you, sister.
Nice to see you. Back again. Last time we did this was in Chicago.
We did. Caused a little trouble in Chicago. When you get as old as me, it's just good to be seen.
Well, first off, how are we doing? Are we losing money or winning money?
I wore my gambling shirt. I'm winning.
Okay, good.
Later, you will spot me at the craps table in my gambling shirt, so I don't forget what's on the cards.
Oh. What about you, Mike?
I bet against Chuck, so I'm doing pretty good.
In most things in his life, he does that.
Well, I love the dynamic that you have. I've been listening to your podcast. I'm a huge fan.
Thank you.
You have very serene voices, very calming.
Thank you. I know you're talking to me because Mike sounds like nails on a chalkboard.
Oh, my God. All right. I want to get into it because we obviously have to talk about the news of the week, the executive actions that were signed by President Joe Biden protecting the undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens, as well as providing work visas for some dreamers. And this came a few weeks after the executive action to close the border to asylum seekers, depending on different conditions. Some would say this is a bit contradictory, but as we saw and as Arturo spoke about, within our community, there's a little bit of mixed emotions when it comes to immigration. Yeah. What have you guys seen?
Oh my God, Mike's gonna take this because he'll do a TED Talk, but you gotta keep it to like 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Well, look, I think there's so many levels to this that I want to talk about, but let me say this. Some of the striking numbers that were coming out, I think to most people, were when Latinos were saying at 69, 70% of Latinos supported the executive action on asylum restrictions, virtually indistinguishable from the overall electorate. People were kind of shocked by that, surprised by that. That's something that has been emanating and coming for some time. And I think that the most important takeaway is we have to look at the leaders in our community and how they're talking about it, and recognize that the immigration issue specifically has changed from the way we as Latino leaders and elected officials have talked about it in the past. If you look at my good friend Alex Padilla, the U.S. Senator from California, Californios, very critical of the president's executive action on asylum. Contrast that with Ruben Gallego from Arizona, who recognized this in his official statement, said this is the first and necessary step to securing the border. Okay? Could not be more diametrically opposed. What I will say is this: we have to understand, if we are going to lead this community through the next 3 or 4 decades, that we have diverse opinions on this central issue, and we cannot allow this one issue to define our community. And that's what you're hearing at the highest levels of the Democratic Party. It's a moment that I've waited for a very long time, because it's going to allow us to talk about the underlying challenges that are facing the broadest swath of our community. So let me leave it at that, and we'll have Chuck kind of talk a bit more tactically on how immigration specifically is affecting us.
Well, that being said, do you think that these executive actions are going to sway voters in one way, or most people just made up their mind already on the issue?
Look, I disagree a lot of the things that Mike Madrid says, but on this point, I think we agree on some of it. I never give him all the credit, but I give him part of the credit because he will go on forever. But the thing that we've got to talk about is the politics. Like, there's no doubt, for all of you who've never seen us, we should start with the way we normally start, just so you're all clear. I'm the Democrat in the cowboy hat, and he's the Republican in these girl shoes. Now, I'm just saying that normally when we go places, they're like, Chuck, let's go hunting and fishing and let's go kill something. I'm like, I'm the Democrat, we're not killing nothing. And Mike Madrid went to Georgetown and has a college education, and I can't find Germany on a map. But together, we have this podcast called The Latino Vote, and for all of you, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and we are actually recording this live today to be a Latino Vote podcast, so you will hear yourself clapping in the background.
That's news to me. I didn't know that.
Absolutely. We didn't get a release from Telemundo. We're going to put that on you later because we don't have to pay her.
It's okay. I'll take my rights over.
The politics of this are very unique. Republicans will use immigration like they always use immigration to go scare white women in the suburbs. And that's what they're doing right now, because they're losing white women in the suburbs. And me and Mike talk about this on the podcast because of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision. And you see women running to the Democratic Party. But Republicans see that, and they need to stop that if they want to win the election, because that's an electorate that they've always relied on. More heavily, less heavily, we can debate that. But the way that they do that is by scaring the shit out of them, saying all these brown people are just flowing over the border. They're going to, as Mike said in his new book, you should buy his new book, The Latino Century, that put it up to prop. You should buy this book. That he lost Mike Madrid the moment Donald Trump said they're bringing drugs, they're rapists, by demagoguing us. Well, it's just been carried on now to where they're using this as an issue. And the executive action, and I'll stop, that's my Mike Madrid wind-up, is that politically, President Biden started the conversation to stop some of that by saying, we can secure the border and we can be fair to folks that are here by doing something that we had never done before. And I'll stop my loud mouth.
And we saw that many Latinos agree with that.
Well, look, the President Biden would not have signed that asylum restriction unless their own polling was showing overwhelming support.
That part.
Overwhelming support amongst Latinos for the move. We can like that or not like that. I'm not a personal fan of the policy, but I think it's brilliant politics. I'm going to give it to the guy. Despite all the criticism that he's going to, go ahead, have it. Despite all of the grinching I thought we were going to hear from the Democratic Party, I was like, oh boy, Biden's going to get it. He's going to get it. And you know what? Silencio. Silencio. Especially from the people within his own campaign. Many of them who have been pushing aggressively since Barack Obama in 2012 got the high level of Latino support at 71, 72%. And let me look, Arturo just did a phenomenal job of going over the data. Almost half of our vote is new since 2012. There's one data point he didn't point out that I want to bring home. Over 80% of those voters, those new voters since 2012, are US born. The majority of them are third generation. And now there's a discernible fourth generation of Latinos. And if you don't think that their priorities are entirely different than what the Latino vote has been for the last 30 years, you're going to miss out on what's going to happen over the next 30 years. This conference will be very different. Your vote bases will be very different. The issues that you deal with will be very different. That's the sign of a community that is maturing and moving from a small niche minority into a consequential voting bloc that's going to define the future of this next Latino century. Hold up the book.
Oh my God, here we go.
Was that good?
We got
How was that?
Well, let's talk precisely about the Latino voter outreach. We know
Yeah.
that both campaigns made big promises that they were going to invest a lot of time and money into doing it. We know that the Biden campaign has touted that they started earlier on. The Trump campaign has lagged. They recently did. Do you think they're doing enough?
Look, they'll never do, quote unquote, enough, but they're doing more than they have ever done.
Okay.
Democrats got the shit scared out of them in 2016 when they saw these spikes happen with Latinos voting Republican in Miami-Dade and the Texas Valley. And then over the country, there was just an increase everywhere. You can't deny that. Me and Mike talk about it. He loves when I admit it. But things changed in 2022. It leveled out. The big thing is, what will it do in 2024? Well, the Democrats have now spent more money talking to Latinos. They have more Latinos in positions of power, at least at the highest level. You have Julie Chavez Rodriguez running the Biden campaign. They started doing bilingual communications. I talk about this all the time on the podcast. I used to be one of the biggest critics and cynics of the party and its organization. But it wouldn't be fair if I didn't give credit where credit's due. In the last off-year elections, Democrats outspent Republicans 8-1 in just one measurable thing, which was Spanish TV and radio. And now the Republicans were like, we didn't have the spike we had in 22, so they're going to come back and spend more money now. I don't worry about the presidential level. There's so much money, billions of dollars, that they will throw enough money at our community to have a good operation on the presidential side and the Trump side. I worry about what happens below the presidency.
Yeah.
What's going on in those local communities? And for everybody here who's followed me on Twitter for more than 5 seconds know that Brown consultants matter and that we need more Latino operatives working on those races. Yeah. That's where I worry. As this electorate that Mike's talking about matures, you don't see that same class of Brown professionals getting the opportunities that me and Mike started getting 30 years ago. Right. That's going to be the biggest dividing line, I think, in these elections.
Definitely. And speaking along the lines of campaigns, we know that recently Trump changed from Latinos for Trump to Latino Americans for Trump. Do you think that's a good shift?
I think it's one of the most consequential changes in a presidential campaign that I have seen since the Bush campaign in 2000, which I was very involved with. I want to explain why.
You wrote about this in your book. I just read it.
Okay, but I'm not plugging the book, but I'll do a lot of that in a second. But I really want you to hear what I'm going to say with lightning and thunder, because it explains the differences between both parties. Joe Biden launched his Latino effort with a slogan effort called Latinos con Biden. He went to a Mexican restaurant in Tucson. Very stereotypical type of imagery, symbolism, and name for an effort that you have seen since Gerald Ford in the mid-1970s. Donald Trump changing to Latino Americans, added the Americans for Trump, is speaking directly to that massive growth that Arturo was talking about. Pew Hispanic Research, the gold standard of Latino polling, has said for many years that by the third generation, 2/3 of Latinos identify themselves overwhelmingly as American first and Latinos Hispanic second. So they're talking to two different Latino audiences, literally. And so Biden's campaign will focus on what Democrats have historically done, not terribly well, by the way, on turnout and ground game activities and trying to boost those Latino numbers, especially amongst first and second generation. They'll utilize a lot of Spanish language television, and they'll use a lot of ground game activity. The Trump campaign won't. They will do the exact opposite. They will try to incorporate a more seamless effort with their economic messaging and speak to the anxieties that you saw in the polling in the top 1 or 2 issues. And the difference there is everything. What the Biden campaign and Democrats are doing is they're speaking to Latinos primarily through a racial, ethnic identity lens, which is fine. Democrats have done that to varying degrees of success for 30 years. What the Republicans are now doing is speaking to them as an economic voter first and foremost with racial sensibilities. Completely different approaches, and we're going to see which one works this November.
And I'm curious what both of you think about neither of the candidates being here at NALEO.
Oh, great. Well, go ahead, Mike. You tell them.
Yeah, look, as somebody who's been working, with NALEO and a huge fan of what you all have built and been a part of, it is absolutely heartbreaking to see, because NALEO was the one safe place where you could always expect Republicans and Democrats to come and speak to the community. And Arturo said something very, very profound and very accurate, which is that is not a reflection on our community. It is a reflection on the state of our politics. But what I will also do is say it is incumbent upon everybody, Republicans and Democrats and independents in this room, to start demanding and defining that the parties respond to us as a community, because that is a result, that type of activity is a result of relying on the parties, Democrat and Republican, to address our concerns. They're not going to, and our voters are saying that in the data. We have to define that agenda. We shouldn't need them to come here to start giving us these platitudes. We need to start being the voters that are driving both parties away from those extremes and to the center. And the beauty is, for the first time in all the years that we've been doing this, Latinos are going to be the critical vote in every one of the swing states that will determine the next president of the United States.
Y no te vas a salvar. What is your opinion?
I agree.
Very politically correct.
See, we get along.
Bueno, hablando ahora sí del libro, I want to talk about the book, which, by the way, amazing artwork on the cover. I wonder who did it?
That's my painting.
It's amazing. You have many talents.
Chuck modeled for it. Chuck's the...
This is Chuck, in case you can't see. But the Latino Century, How Americans' Largest Minority is Transforming Democracy. Obviously, you wrote a whole book on this.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, how would you say we're transforming democracy?
Wait. Let me talk about the book.
Yeah.
So it ain't going to surprise none of y'all that I don't do a whole lot of reading. But I discovered audiobooks, and it's changed my life. Now, I wrote a book, let me be clear, called Tio Bernie, that a lot of you bought and read. I appreciate that. And my soon-to-be wife, Ebony Payne, in 30 days, she'll be my wife. She wanted me to name it the first book I read, I wrote. I say all of that to say, for the last 3 days since the audio book finally came out, with a great author, by the way, the guy who's reading it is really good. I don't remember his name.
It's not me.
What's his name?
Leo Sorio.
Yeah, he's good. So I'm now on chapter 6, and this is what I want to say about the book. It's like the book is like crack to me now, because I know Mike so well, but I didn't know Mike so well. So I didn't know about Mike's nana, and I had a mamaw. So we talk about our grandmothers being such an important part of our lives, but our grandmothers couldn't have been more different. My mamaw was a white woman. His nana was a Mexican immigrant. My grandma Carmen was a Mexican immigrant. To his generational thing, I'm third generation, my boy is fourth, and those Rocha boys you see on my social media are sixth. So me and Mike, in the first 6 chapters of this book, illustrates how different we are. I mean, from when he used to get the freaking newspaper at his house when they moved out into the suburbs, him and his folks, he would read the news from the newspaper. I remember knocking my papaw down to get to the paper to read the comics. But Mike was reading the news and watching the news about the Iran-Contra hearings, about the tear down the wall. I didn't know shit about any walls. All I knew about was building fence. I was as ignorant as the day is long when I was at that point in my life. The things I discovered later in my life would bring me and Mike together, which was this path through politics where neither one of us were getting the respect we deserved. When he went and did an interview to be the political director and got the deputy political director job, but wasn't being paid the political director, but was doing all the work, was the same story when I got the job as the political director of the steelworkers, but they called me the political coordinator, and I was only making 40 grand a year. That's how me and Mike get along. And when you read my book, T.O. Burney, and you read this book side by side in the first 5 chapters, he grows up to be this Republican operative. I'm this left-wing labor activist, redneck-sounding folks, but we both love our community. Yeah. We have a vision for our community that ends at the same place, which is prosper for every brown kid that had to go through what we went through. We just get there at different routes.
Yeah.
And that just represents our community in general,
And I didn't
right?
mean to step on your book, but I've been moved by the book in the last couple of days.
Yeah. There's some beauty in that, and I think it is rare. My story is I came up grew up in a family of Democrats, working class Democrats. I would say that we were paycheck to paycheck, but we never made it from one paycheck to the next one. I think many of you guys can relate to that life. That's a lot of the families that you represent in your districts. And when we talk about the economic condition of where people are at today, I wanted to tell it through the trajectory of my own life and my own experience. Chuck does this very eloquently too, is when you've lived that life, it makes you a better consultant. And we're a lot better than a lot of the other Ivy League guys, that we're competing with white guys that are trying to talk to our community. And the difference is, one of the things that I really have loved about being in this profession is I get along a lot better with Latino Democrats than probably anybody else, because I know them, and I love them, and I grew up with them. And as much as I may disagree with them on some policies, there's absolutely never been a question as to whether or not both of us were working for the betterment of our community. It's why Antonio Villaraigosa asked me to run his campaign for governor. It's why Alex Padilla and I have been friends since our mid-20s. It's why I've worked with and volunteered for every Latino leader of our caucuses in California, and know most of the folks in DC. And I say that only because I try to use those stories to be an example of where our community is going and the need for us to come together and define a Latino agenda that is expansive, that is aspirational, and that focuses on blue-collar working class people. And that doesn't need to be a Democrat or Republican agenda, as much as both parties are trying desperately to require us to put at one side or the other. The book was supposed to be a very data-driven book in my own head. I wanted to put out a bunch of polling numbers, crosstabs, graphs, and charts. And Simon & Schuster came back and said, we're not doing that. And I said, well, why not? And they said, because only you and 3 other people want to read that book. You need to tell a story so that people can understand and grasp it through a real-life experience. And I think that's what I've accomplished. And Chuck's a big part of that book as well. Not in the first 6 chapters, but you'll get to it. You'll be in there.
You mentioned me finally in chapter 2.
Yeah. But the main takeaway of the book, and I want you all to understand, is this. At a moment in time when people are very rightfully concerned about the underpinnings of democracy, when people are worried about whether or not the American experiment and the idea of what this country stands for is going to exist beyond November, I will say this with every ounce of fiber of my being. There is no reform. There is no electoral college reform. There is no constitutional change to the electoral college or dark money or stopping foreign influences from involving themselves in our democracy that can save us. The only thing that can save us is a culture that has trust and confidence in our institutions and believes in each other to build a better society. And that's why every day, all of those Latinos that Arturo was talking about that come onto the voter rolls bring that blended culture. We have a higher level of trust and confidence in our institutions than any other race or ethnicity in this country by a wide margin. We believe in the idea of America, even though we have never fully had a place at the table for it. And we, all of you, especially as elected officials, will be driving that change to determine whether or not our culture can sustain the battering that it has taken. That is the only thing that can save America, and it is truly embodied in the hope and the aspiration of the immigrant. It is what refreshes us. It is what keeps the American mythology and the American idea alive, and the book is a very hopeful one about our ability, ours as Latinos, to save the country and where it's headed.
I think that merits a round of applause, just because in an era that we're living so much divisiveness, of so much polarization, that you two can sit down at a table at whatever you do for your podcast and just have these dialogues and have these conversations. I think we've lost that so much in our society, and it's really disappointing because it's part of democracy at the end of the day, and it's necessary for us to keep growing as a company, as a country.
Do it remotely.
You do it remotely, so you maintain the peace.
I don't have to sit with him.
I will say this, though. Some of the best parts of working with Chuck is sometimes I'll be working for a candidate, be a Latino candidate somewhere, and I'll just pick up the phone and say, I don't know how, I got this problem. How would I solve this? And vice versa. He'll do the same. And if it's to help a Latino get elected somewhere, Gary, Indiana, or somewhere, we volunteer and throw in and give our best efforts to help a Latino somewhere to put them in a position of leadership somewhere in the country, because we both believe in it, and that is important.
Putting the party aside. And I know also, I've been listening to your podcast as well, and you mentioned something. You said Latinos are the moderate voters of both parties.
Yeah.
New emergent political view. Can you delve deeper into that? Because I just think that's so interesting. How to be more moderate?
This is the party that is going to be able to capture the hearts and minds and votes of a multi-ethnic working class is going to be the dominant party of the next generation. The Democrats, as much as they don't like to hear this, sorry, Chuck, is they're having a real problem with the working class piece of that. They're losing the working class. And that's not Mike Madrid saying that. That's the working class voter voting with their feet and moving towards the Republican Party. The Republicans have had a problem with the multi-ethnic part up until recently, when Latinos and African Americans and immigrants by themselves of every nationality and origin are moving to the right because of that working class problem. So I think that we have to first kind of grasp and understand that if you focus on those economic issues for the middle class, and both parties right now are completely consumed in the culture wars, Latino voters are the moderates in both parties. But to Arturo's point earlier too, and that was a fantastic data presentation, we have the weakest party anchors of any partisan anchors of any race or ethnicity in the country. We're rejecting everything. I said earlier, we have the highest level of trust and confidence in our institutions. There are two exceptions. It exists for higher education and the church and the media and the government and the military. We support all those at very high levels. You know what the two institutions that we don't? The Republican and Democratic parties. Our voters are just saying, ya basta, enough. I've had enough. They're just checking out, and they're either not voting, or they're leaving one party, or increasingly, as you pointed out, moving towards third-party candidates. Now, will some of that change as we get closer to the election cycle? It will. But this is going to be a definitive feature of democracy going forward, and it's why I am urging you, somewhere in this room, there will emerge a national or a couple national leaders that are articulating an agenda for Latinos are heading. It is not going to be in the party's structures as they exist. It will not, I assure you that.
So, couple things. First of all, in his book, he uses a lot of big words, and you can see this Georgetown degree. So don't let him put all that on you. There's a lot of big words in the book. That's A. B, one of you smell really good, and I can't figure out which one of y'all it is.
Not me, yeah.
Three, I never went to college. I was a single father. I got a criminal record, and I try to explain to Mike Madrid all the time that these are called calluses that are on my hands. And I love Joe Biden. Let me be clear. So it ain't all of us. The difference in the electorate and what we're seeing with what Mike was explaining that I disagree some with is that the folks who've always been Democrats, who are Latino voters, not the Latino vote, are still Democrats. And they still vote at a pretty high percentage for them. The problem is there's less of them and there's more of these younger Latinos, to Arturo's and Nicole's presentation earlier, that are coming of age. Many of them are what I call Republican curious. That means they don't know no better. They don't know what the party has done because we've done a shitty job at telling them what we've done. And they're the fastest growing, and Mike says this a lot, they're the fastest part of the middle class that is growing that didn't go to college. A lot of them work in construction trades. A lot of them, I was telling Mike a while ago that I was watching focus groups. I won't say it to all of y'all. I'll just say in a congressional race in California with a bunch of hairy-legged men that were like 35 to 45 who had a couple kids and some dogs, sounded a lot like me, figuring out how to make it through life. And I'm asking him questions about, what do you think about this congressional ad or this one? What do you think about the price of gas in California? Like, they were like, again, they're just kind of fed up with the system. Now, 15 years ago, they were rock solid Democrats in their 20s. Now these boys are in their 40s or late 30s and they got a couple kids and they're acting differently. What we've seen is an electorate that's coming of age. That don't mean they're getting smarter or they're getting more conservative. It shows the weakness of both parties in the outreach to explain what they do to these voters.
Yes.
In my opinion, Democrats have done more for working class, hence why I joined the party. But then you have nominees like a Donald Trump, a Barack Obama, or even if you read this book again, this George Bush and the outreach and the whole Philadelphia thing, I don't know none of that shit. Anyway, all the stuff that they did was really smart, but at least they were doing something. Donald Trump is an anomaly. The real question will be what happens when he either gets elected or he goes away. Will that, whatever they're doing in the party, stay with the party, this racist element? Will they go back to talking about economic kitchen table issues? If you really think about what the Republicans are doing in the ads that I see them running, I'm working in 61 congressional races. They're not talking about what they're doing to lift the middle class. They're not being aspirational. They're saying brown people are coming to rape and rob you. They're saying that he's liberal, Biden's old, he falls down. While Democrats are saying choice, Dobbs, this thing, crazy man, orange man, insurrectionist, democracy. Both of these messages ain't what Mike Madrid and me are talking about. I joined the party. I joined the party, and we talk about this on the podcast, because I joined a union. And when I joined the union when I was 19, I was as ignorant as the day is long. Again, back to growing up on a farm, reading the comics instead of reading the news. Didn't know who Tom Brokaw was or what the wall was. I just knew this is what everybody else did, so I joined the union. If somebody at that point would have said, like Mike Madrid's father or his mother, who had these conservative values, who were hardworking people, who wanted the best for their family, so they move out to the suburbs. All of this trauma that we both lived through in different ways to assimilate or Latinize communities we were in with this farming community is the betterment of people. And what do you do there? And that's the piece that politics on both sides have forgotten about. And I think that's why you've seen this real sway. Sure, did it move and did it move back? Sure. But that's what that's why you're at the point, to Mike's point about us being the moderate voter, because 40% of the electorate is new voters since 2016. And if you're not a regular, all of you have run races. If you're not a regular, as Arturo says, prime voter that votes in every election, you're not getting a lot of communication. And when you don't get a lot of communication and you add on 50 bazillion channels on social media now or on cable, you lose that communication. And then when you lose the communication of either party, you end up with what we've been talking about, which is Latino voters who are up for grabs. You got to show them what you can do for them.
Well, not only they're up for grabs, but even just on the street talking and interviewing different people, many are disillusioned. Those people who usually participate this year, they're like, I don't know, should I even cast a ballot? Should I cast a vote? Who do I vote for? They don't feel like they have options. So how are we going to move forward?
Well, look, I mean, I'll say it again, is I don't believe that there's anybody, and this is where I do. I kicked off my book tour 2 days ago in Sacramento, a lot of Latino Democrats, all friends. My admonition to them was, you've been relying on your party to articulate an agenda, to spend the money to turn your voters out, to help you understand what's going on in our community. Quit being a minority. You're not a minority anymore. You're a working majority. Start acting like it. Use the power that you have to drive the agenda forward. We are emerging. All these numbers that we're telling you about require us to shift our mindsets. There are still great places like North Carolina that are getting their first mayor and their first county judge, and that's beautiful. That's beautiful. We're going to all support them and bring all the networks that we have to support them. I'm from California. We've got like our 5th and 8th and 10th mayor now. But you know what's not changing is the economic condition of our people. And I'm not going to blame all of that on us, but I'm also not going to excuse all of us. Because at a certain point, representation isn't the only objective. results are. And we have the votes. We have the power. Whether it's at the city council level, the state legislature, or at the ballot box. We have to start taking it upon ourselves to drive our majority forward and create the community, the future for our community that we want, that we can build. It's ours now. And that's going to take a national change in elected leadership's perspective on who we are.
I love that. Well, also, we of course know that we're going into a presidential election where it's the first time that AI is really prevalent.
Yes.
How is this going to be also a deciding factor within the next couple of months?
That's artificial intelligence.
Oh, okay. I know it. That's like cartoons. I know what this is. The biggest change in politics has been technology, and it's always been technology. I remember back, and I wrote about it in my book, how I used to operate with a beeper. We didn't have cell phones, but I had a beeper. Now, everybody thought I was just a Mexican drug dealer in Dallas, but I had a beeper. And that technology changed my life. My mama could text me and be like, 911, call the house. And I could roll over to the payphone and call my mama. Now we have AI. And you're really going to see big differences, and you have to be more aware of what's going on, of what's real and what's not real. Right? It just is another thing we will deal with. Is it good? Is it bad? I think it can be wonderfully good. I think it can be horribly bad. It's like the internet itself. There's so much, I've gotten so much smarter, I can listen to Mike Madrid's book on my cell phone while I'm on an airplane. I love technology. I can ask the Siri thing like, who's winning the basketball game? And not have to turn on the TV. Technology is wonderful, but it's also very, very scary. And we're now at the point to where sure, we're more susceptible to it, multiple languages, blah, 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 but that's not the difference. The difference is now we're in a position of power, to Mike's point. That you can't be the president unless you can win Latino voters in the state you're sitting in now and along with the other 6 major states that are up. Same with the Senate map that overlaps it almost perfectly with Nevada senators and Arizona senators. Y'all know I work with Ruben Gallego. He's going to be the next senator of Arizona. And the thing that we don't talk about enough that we do talk about on the podcast is it goes down to even the congressional level. For the first time in American history, there are 12 congressional seats that are marginal. They move back and forth in every election that has more than 35% Latino population. Half of those are majority Latino seats. Half of those are in California, in the Central Valley and outside of LA, and a bunch of them in New York City. Now you'll see AI have a more dramatic effect just because we're going to be the focus of more attention in every one of these elections that even white consultants cannot ignore because we're just a bigger piece of the pie to win the election. I think that's where you see AI have a bigger effect.
And we have about 12 minutes left, so I want to get into the issues. Obviously, we've been talking about the issues that matter to our community. So first and foremost, we've seen that the economy is number one. Obviously, our community is feeling the effects of inflation, of high interest rates. Do you think that this is going to be a deciding factor, especially considering that polls show, the Ipsos Telemundo poll shows that, Axios Ipsos Telemundo poll shows that many think that Republicans do better when it comes to economy?
There was too many people in that poll. You got to do this one.
Let me say this about the economy. I think both parties are approaching this very differently. And there is a funny curiosity about polling where you could be in the middle of a Great Depression, but if there's a Republican president, the Republicans say the economy's going great. And if you're in the middle of a depression and the Democrat's president, the Democrats will be like, the economy's going great. The one group that is really actually, and voters have been saying that we've been heading in the wrong direction for a number of years now. I'm not a big believer that most voter groups are voting on the economy anymore. If they were, the Republicans would have picked up 45, 50 seats in the House in the midterms.
Great point.
They didn't. And in 2020, you can make the same exact argument, right? We had the highest turnout in the history of this country, and Republicans picked up seats. So we got to start, Biden won rather, Trump lost, but Republicans picked up seats. Let me say that again. Republicans picked up seats in the highest turnout election in the history of this country. The coalitions in this country are changing, and they are changing dramatically. And so just to say the economy and is it going to have an impact is missing, especially what's happening to our community. So let me be very brief and say what it is. It's affordability. 1 in 5 Hispanic men, listen to this statistic with lightning and thunder. 1 in 5 Hispanic men work in the residential construction industry or a related field. 20% of our men work in construction or related field at a time when interest rates have tripled and the value of our currency has lost 20% in the last 3 or 4 years. That is a gut punch to 20% of our families. Don't tell me that Latino workers are better off now than they were 4, 5 years ago. Maybe not during the pandemic, I'm with you there 100%, but don't insult us by saying that things are economically better for at least 20% of our families. That's just construction, by the way, okay? So yeah, affordability is a massive, serious, significant issue. And until we start doing something bold in our policy making and our policy proposing, like a Marshall Plan for housing to get hammers swinging again and sticks back in the ground and food back on the table, they're going to feel it in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in your neighborhoods. So is the economy going to play an impact? It's going to play a very significant impact for a small sliver of voters. But you know what? That's our sliver of voters. Those are our people. We're the ones. We're poorer. We're middle class. We're lower middle class. We're the ones impacted by the economy. I'm not worried about people, grinching about the price of the ham dinner at the country club. They're going to be fine. I'm worried about the people that are making that dinner possible, serving that food, keeping that country club running. That's the agenda I want to see.
The Democrats have been doubling down on abortion rights, as you've mentioned a couple of times. Yes, we've seen it. Do you think that's going to turn out Latino voters?
It'll turn out some Latino voters. And look, politicians and parties and even organizations that are partisan are lazy. And they're lazy because they do a certain amount of polling because they've run the same campaigns in a box. Again, I learned this from Mike Madrid on a plane right here, that everything that he was told, I was being told. We were in separate parties, and you have to run a campaign this way. And both groups are still running them that way today. They go out and they ask voters with polling, what do you care about? And does this thing move you? And what do you think about Dobbs? And what do you think about immigrants and immigration? And the campaigns will be overwhelmingly, and they already are, y'all. Anywhere if you live in a targeted congressional race or Senate race, we're on the air with TV ads now. Ruben Gallego have been up on ads for 2 months, and we ain't going to stop, just like the Republicans won't be. But with that campaign, we led by talking about a Latino that came from a single mother who was a Marine veteran, who used to flip burgers and grew up this middle-class life, and he understands the pain you're going through, so you can have an affordable, Mike Madrid, life. But the majority of ads will be around what white posters and white operatives, who are well-meaning, by the way. Just because they're white, my mama's white, I love white people. I'm talking about well-meaning white folks who are trying to do what the best they can, and this Dobbs decision pissed women off and pissed off lots of Latinas. And this is a very personal thing for them. And because it moves still women in polls, they will use that. And they should, because it does. But I'm under the thinking that you can do that and other things at the same time. Micro-targeting is not something new. You talked about it in your book when you learned about it back in your youth. You can do both at the same time. It's just like Republicans. I'm not going to talk like Moses and say, listen to this with fire and brimstone, but you should. They're going to talk about trying to scare people by saying that immigrants are flooding into your community and that the border is not secure. It's just what each one of the parties do. And they will continue to do that because it does still work with a big majority of people. It just doesn't work with all the people.
Can I speak to that real quick? This is a really fascinating issue to me because I think it speaks more than anything else to the changing nature of the coalitions in both parties. Dobbs and abortion rights are a winning issue for Democrats, even amongst Latinos, Latinas. What I will say is it always has been, by the way. It never has not been. The question is how significant those margins are. But here's what I find fascinating about it. Biden has spent an unprecedented amount of money, unprecedentedly early, with Latino ads, focusing on all these states. And you know what? His numbers have gotten worse. I saw an ad that they put out where it's a middle-aged man with his 2 daughters. Many of you probably saw this ad in Spanish, saying, I'm an Iraq veteran and I'm kind of, I work for a living and I care about abortion rights. It's the most peculiar damn ad I'd ever seen in my 30 years of running campaigns. The main reason why was I didn't know who they were talking to, and I'm absolutely convinced they didn't either. And here's why. Dobbs is a winning issue for Latinas. There's no question about it. It works. It is. We have the largest gender gap of any race or ethnicity in the country. Our women are voting for Democrats at greater rates than our men who are moving towards the Republican Party. And that's where the Democrats' problem is. They don't have a problem on abortion rights with Latinas. They know that. They have a problem with economics and economic populism with men. And what I'm convinced of, equally strongly of, is they are ceding that ground. They are saying the days of Democrats getting 70% plus of the Latino vote are gone. And when I hear these consultants from Biden's campaign saying, oh no, it didn't happen, there's been no rightward shift, there's no rightward shift, now they're saying, oh yeah, it wasn't that big, it's not that much of a problem, it's only 35%, and after 2020, then the 2022 cycle, they're saying, oh well, yeah, okay, it happened, but it didn't happen even more, so I guess things aren't all that bad. These are really big numbers for a Republican. I've been doing this for 30 years, folks. 30 years. I have never seen a Democrat heading into a race like this losing 45% of the Latino vote, ever, because no one's ever seen it. And what I'm saying is, if you're going to cede that vote and only talk about abortion, at least be honest about it and own it more so you can focus more on that universe. I just don't think they have an economic message. That's what I'm convinced of. They're going to say the only way we can win this race is through cultural issues, which I don't think it's a terribly bad strategy. I just think it's an unnecessary strategy. You can do both at the same time. They are choosing not to.
All righty. Well, we got 3 minutes left before I let you guys go. I want to know what other races you're following, which are the most important, the ones to watch where Latino vote is really going to make an impact.
Ruben Gallego's race in Arizona. Look, in the same way that Jim Clyburn, African-American man, saved Joe Biden's political career in the primaries in 2020, I believe Ruben Gallego is going to save Joe Biden's presidency, because he is going to pull enough Latino voters across the voting booth line to deliver Arizona for Joe Biden. It is his best shot. So Arizona's key for me.
There's a handful of House races. I would say Arizona too. Thanks, Mike, for saying that, because I think that Ruben is a one-in-a-lifetime candidate because of what he's done to serve his country, and that because he's one of my really good friends, I know he really believes it. Me and him both have had to work for people who really didn't mean it, who just were doing what they did, and they were narcissists, and they love themselves, and they like to see their pictures on yard signs. But there's houses. There's
nobody in here.
None of y'all. Hell no. Yeah. I'm still going to mess with half of y'all who still hire white consultants. But anyway, then get back to the House races, is that pay attention to California and New York congressional races with Latino politicians. Because there's no presidential contest there. Biden and Trump ain't spending money in LA and San Francisco, just like they're not spending money in New York. Watch these races. Watch California 22, watch California 13, and watch California 27. All majority Latino districts. Watch New York 18, 17, and 2. Those are the 3. These will determine who controls Congress. They all have heavy Latino populations that couldn't be more different, and there will not be a dollar spent on a Senate race or a presidential race, so you're going to get a true accounting of what's going on in our community at these House races. It's just something to really watch.
It's going to be very interesting. And we have a historic presidential debate coming up on June 27th. First time an incumbent goes up against an ex-former president. What's what you're going to be looking for?
Go ahead, Mike.
No, you go.
I have done presidential debates. I've also, every presidential candidate that I've worked for, I've made come to NALEO. I'll say that as well. And this is a really big opportunity because, especially this first one, because debates don't win elections, but coverage of debates can influence election. If you're reading about it in your social media feed, it makes a difference. So I'm going to see if Donald Trump comes in unhinged. I'm going to see if Joe Biden stumbles over things he shouldn't stumble over. And those are the two big things I'm going to be looking at.
What about you, Mike?
I'm going to be looking for that too because it'll be fun to see who does whatever. I don't believe that either vice presidential picks or debates have make one iota of difference in the trajectory of a race.
Very interesting.
He just likes to disagree with me. I want to thank all of you for also tuning into the Latino Vote podcast. Don't forget to like us. Don't forget to share it.
You took my words away. The Latino Vote podcast.
That's right.
How often can we catch a podcast of yours?
Normally every week unless Mike's got a hair appointment.
Oh. Well, make sure you follow them. Make sure you go buy the book as well, The Latino Century, already available as well.
Yep.
And I want to let you all know that also on Telemundo, we're very proud. We're going to be simulcasting that presidential debate on
awesome.
June 27th in Spanish because it's so important for our community to get that information.
That Mike said it didn't, I think it does.
Well, thank you both for this. Round of applause for you.
Thank you
and
so
for all of
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take a selfie in the lights.
All righty. That is it. Thank you all for joining.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage NALEO and NALEO Educational Fund CEO, Arturo Vargas.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Nicole, Chuck, Mike. What an amazing conversation. Okay, want to invite you to the coffee and confections outside. We have dessert for you. I hope you'll take advantage of the last two breakout sessions that we have. And folks, we still need your support. Some of you have donated to the Pearl Anniversary Circle, but we still need to keep it going. Make a tax-deductible gift to the NALEO Educational Fund today to join the Pearl Anniversary Circle. Again, please consider $30, $300, $3,000, whatever you can give. You can scan the QR code on the screens and it will take you to our donate pledge at naleo.org/donate where you can make a contribution. That website again, naleo.org/donate. Or you can visit the registration desk and you can make a contribution there with your credit card. Okay, 2 sessions left. Empowering families to achieve student success. Election 2024 and beyond, NALEO Educational Fund's role in strengthening our democracy. So those are the 2 sessions left. Once again, my appreciation to the NALEO and NALEO Educational Fund Boards of Directors, the amazing NALEO Educational Fund staff. I hope you've enjoyed the NALEO 41st Annual Conference. We'll see you next year in Atlanta for the 42nd Conference, July. It's in July, not June, 22nd to the 24th. We have a special event coming up on September 24th. It is the Edward R. Roybal Legacy Celebration in Washington, D.C. Stay tuned. We're going to announce this year's recipient very soon. And if any of you, or if you know somebody who's been elected and took office since January 2023, please consider applying for the NALEO 15th Biennial National Institute for Newly Elected Officials that will be held November 19th to the 21st, 2024 in Dallas, Texas. So that's it, folks. We're wrapping up. Safe travels home. What happened in Vegas is going to stay in Vegas. Accept what you learned. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you in Atlanta, if not sooner. Bye.